Today, we're diving into a really compelling analysis that challenges one of the most iconic images from the epic Ramayana, the true identity of the Vanaras. You know, when you think of the Ramayana, what pops into your head? For most of us, it's Rama, Sita, and of course, their loyal allies, the Vanaras, that huge army of monkeys led by amazing figures like Hanuman and Sugriva. That image is just everywhere. But hang on a second. What if that image, as powerful and widespread as it is actually built on a fundamental misunderstanding? What if the original text tells a completely different story? Okay, let's really get into it. We are going to follow the clues laid out in a deep, evidence-based analysis of the original Sanskrit text, the Valmiki Ramayana. This isn't about mythology or belief. It's about digging into what the words on the page actually say. So our first stop is the language itself. We're going to try and crack the epic's linguistic code. The most important word here is Vanara. Now, if you break it down in Sanskrit, it's not actually a word for a species of animal. Vana means forest and Ra means dweller. So the direct literal translation of Vanara is simply forest dweller. And hey, this isn't some modern spin. The text itself tells us this. In the Balakanda, Valmiki literally writes, Vane charati iti Vanaras, which means those who range in forests are called Vanaras. The definition is right there, baked into the source code of the epic. And here's where it gets really interesting. The analysis shows Valmiki makes a very clear distinction. See, Sanskrit has a specific word for an animal monkey, kapi. And the text does use kapi, but it's used more like a nickname or a metaphor, kind of like calling a brave warrior a lion. The main consistent term for this group of people is always Vanara, forest dweller. To really hammer this point home, the text consistently uses words to describe the Vanaras that are only ever used for humans. They're called jana, meaning a population of people, nara for a man, and nadi for a woman. These words are never, ever used for animals in Sanskrit literature. Okay, so the language points to them being human. But what about their society? Did they act human? Let's move on and see how the case builds. I mean, just look at the kind of brain power we're talking about here. The Vanaras have complex conversations in fluent Sanskrit. Hanuman is even described as a Vedic scholar who writes poetry. They debate political philosophy, they lay out complex military strategies, and they perform incredible feats of engineering. These are things no non-human primate can do. And this isn't just about a few smart individuals. Their entire civilization is described in detail. They have a monarchy with a council of ministers, they've got laws, they perform Vedic funeral rites, they live in fortified cities like Kishkinda with palaces and infrastructure. This is the exact blueprint of a complex human civilization, not a troop of animals. Okay, I know exactly what you're thinking. This all sounds pretty convincing. But what about the giant monkey tail in the room? Let's tackle that head on. This is the big one, right? The question that trips everybody up. If they were a human tribe, why on earth does the text keep mentioning a tail? Well, this is where the text itself gives us the answer. First off, a little biology 101. In primates, tails aren't gender-specific. If the species has one, both males and females have one. But in the Ramayana, it's only the male Vanaras who are described with tails. Second, there's a part where Hanuman is said to be able to shed his Vanara appearance. You can't just shed a limb, but you can take off a piece of a costume. But here it is, the absolute smoking gun. It's a direct quote from Ravana. When he orders Hanuman's tail to be set on fire, the specific Sanskrit word he uses is abhushana. Now, this word doesn't mean limb or body part. Its precise translation is ornament or decoration. The text itself calls the tail an ornament. So this all points to what we could call the costume hypothesis. This is something humans have done forever, using animal features in their clothing to show who they are. Think of Viking horned helmets or Maasai warriors with lion manes. The Vanaras were a forest tribe, so it makes perfect sense that they would adopt the monkey as their totem, and the tail was just part of their ceremonial dress. Now for our final and maybe most mind-blowing piece of evidence. Let's look at the most incredible achievement of the Vanaras, building the Great Setu Bridge to Lanka. The text describes a workforce of up to 1 million individuals. I mean, just let that number sink in. The sheer scale, the coordination required to manage a project like this is way beyond the capability of any animal group on the planet. And think about the skills you'd need. You have to survey the seabed, you need to understand the tides, you're managing massive supply chains for materials, you're applying principles of structural engineering, and you have to manage the whole project. These are all uniquely human skills. And remember, this isn't happening in some fantasy land. The text puts the Vanara kingdom, Kishkinda, right on the map in southern India. This is a real place, a region with thousands of years of continuous human tribal life, but zero evidence of any advanced, non-human primate civilization. So after looking at the language, the society, the biology, and the engineering, what's the final verdict from this deep dive into the text? Let's just run through the case one more time. Linguistically, the words say they're human forest dwellers. Socially, they have a complex human civilization. Biologically, the tale is clearly a costume piece. Culturally, their use of a monkey totem fits perfectly with known human behaviors. And technically, their engineering projects required human intelligence. Every single piece of evidence points in the same direction. The conclusion, based on this systematic reading of the original source, is pretty unavoidable. The Vanaras of the Valmiki Ramayana were not monkeys. They were forest-dwelling human tribal populations. This completely reframes the epic, doesn't it? It suggests there's a core of real history wrapped in beautiful, poetic language. And it leaves us with one last, really provocative thought. If this truth was hiding in plain sight all along, what other so-called myths are actually history, just waiting for us to look at the evidence?